I hope none of you have had to experience going to bed hungry, but according to Feeding America, 1 in 9 Americans can say they face this type of hunger on a daily basis. And I work at a food pantry, so I am well aware that there is hunger in America, even though I have never experienced it myself. But not enough is being done to resolve this food insecurity. So I propose that federal and state governments should supply higher funding towards organizations like the Supplemental Nutritional Aid Program, food pantries, or other hunger aid programs in order to decrease the amount of food insecurity in America. Today, I will first explain the relevance and impact food insecurity has on Americans. Second, I will describe the best solution for food insecurity. And lastly, I will explain why this is the best solution and how you can do your part in aiding the hungry. Feeding America defines food insecurity as a household's inability to provide food for every person to live an active and healthy life. They also explain that food insecurity is caused by a number of factors which could impact anyone. Food insecurity is an extremely relevant issue in America because, according to Hunger Notes, United States Hunger Facts and Poverty Facts, in 2016, 12.3% of Americans were labeled as food insecure. Feeding America published in 2020 a lot of different causes for food insecurity, but they also explain that food insecurity leads to many other consequences, like health problems. It could harm future success and mental states, and leads to sacrifices of other necessities in order to pay for food. And while hunger may not directly affect you, because of this high population of Americans that it does affect, you likely know someone who is struggling with hunger. And Tracy McMillan, in her article, The New Face of Hunger, published in 2014, explains that many people don't realize how big of an issue hunger is in America. And this is because America is stereotypically associated with obesity, and obesity is rarely associated with hunger. But this is a common misconception because many food insecure Americans are in fact obese because of the lack of nutritious foods that are provided in food pantries, and many unhealthy foods often lead to unsatisfying hunger. And now that we know that food insecurity is a huge problem, let's discuss the solution to this crisis. Hunger would decrease if more money went to organizations like SNAP, which stands for the Supplemental Nutritional Aid Program, because they distribute food stamps to the food insecure population. The Center on Budget Priorities and Policies published in 2019 that SNAP had received $68 billion in the year 2018. And while that sounds like a lot of money, it only accounted for 1.5% of total federal government spending. And for a program that aids 40 million Americans, 12.3% of the population, they should receive more funding than 1.5%. So I propose that Congress cuts spending from overfunded programs in order to fund underfunded programs such as SNAP. And more money will lead to a decrease in food insecurity, and this is explained through Tracy McMillan's article, because raising SNAP's budget would raise the amount of money that families receive, and they would no longer be hungry, they would be able to pay for bills, and they would eventually no longer need the assistance of SNAP because their debts would be paid. Bill Ayers, a Why Hunger co-founder, recommends to higher the minimum wage in order to solve hunger. And while this may help some, raising the minimum wage would not be an effective solution because it wouldn't help the entire population, such as the disabled or unemployed who wouldn't directly benefit. And so by now, you are familiar with a very effective solution to hunger, but let's visualize what the future of hunger in America would look like. Without my solution, hunger would continue and people would continue to receive less money from SNAP. With my solution would simply be a less hungry America. More families would receive a larger allowance and be able to pay for food. This way they would put more money toward paying bills and would be more likely to end their own food insecurity. And SNAP would become a short-term aid versus the long-term aid that it is now. So knowing this solution is great, but let's review some of the ways that you can help individually. And by now you know that the government should grant higher funding to food aid programs in order to decrease the amount of food insecure Americans. But there are many things you can do to help the food insecure population and encourage higher funding for SNAP, such as voting for politicians who share the same views on food insecurity as you do. You can support policies, sign petitions, or spread awareness of food insecurity. But as a more direct, you could donate to food pantries or organizations like SNAP. So if we don't spread awareness of food insecurity, the issue will get tossed aside and forgotten about. But if we do spread awareness and publicly support legislative changes, fewer Americans will face hunger. Food insecurity is a huge problem in America and causes many people to worry about where their food comes from. But fortunately, we do have the power to make a difference if we work together to spread awareness.